because my older brother had a box down in the basement of old Marz, like Fantastic Four 10 and 12, stuff like that. It's all dog-eared and everything, but so I think those were the first ones that I remember as a kid. But when I started like picking them off the spinner rack myself, when they were 35 cents, they had that, still only 35 cents burst on it.
Yeah.
To me, I look at that. That's what a comic looks like.
How do you feel that Green Lantern, you see the t-shirts everywhere, and you were instrumental in making Green Lantern such a big hit for 7 years.
All this stuff is, it's part of the culture now. It's part of it's part of pop culture. It's part of the zeitgeist. 10 years ago, if you had said to somebody, who's Iron Man, they would have gone right to Black Sabbath. Nobody knew who the hell Iron Man was. But that movie coming out with perfect casting of Robert Downey Jr., that movie coming out sort of made all of this possible. Now everybody knows. People know who Thanos is. Thanos got mentioned on Saturday Night Live. I wrote Thanos 20 years ago. If you had told me Thanos would get mentioned on Saturday Night Live, I would thought you're nuts. But now it's everybody knows. Comics haven't grown up or changed or anything like that. Comics are still comics. The rest of the world has just discovered what we do. And technology has allowed the rest of the world to figure out what we do in comics. Like the stuff that we could only show in comics. Galactus destroying the world in a 2-page spread by Jack Kirby. The only place you could get that was comics. Now you can get it anywhere. Now you can get it on TV because of digital effects. It's made to a certain extent what we do in comics a little less special because now everybody can get it. But I think there's still something really unique about that work on the page. It's still very personal. It takes a studio full of artists to make Galactus look like a cloud in the Fantastic Four movie. It takes Jack Kirby to make Galactus real on the page.
So what about anime? I mean, you see those, everyone around here is talking about anime. I mean, how do you feel that you as a comic book artist can do to get more people into it the way the anime guys have got that?
Everybody's got their particular flavor. Like anime is not my thing. Manga's not my thing. I grew up on, Kirby and Starlin and Simonson. That's my go-to stuff. But whatever brings people into the tent is good. Whatever, gets people into a building like this, to a show like this is awesome. And if it's anime or manga or cosplay, it's good to have the biggest tent possible and attract as many people possible. Because once you get them into a place like this, you can sort of, you look around and see what else is here. You get exposed to other things. So whatever that first book in the water is to get that bait in your mouth and reel you in, it doesn't really matter what it is as long as we get you.
What projects are you working on
now? Let's see. Beast of the Black Hand for Ominous Press. Dead of Night coming soon from Ominous Press.
So these are your own creations?
Yeah, this is creator-owned stuff. So I generally try to have a balance of creator-owned stuff and company stuff. So as a writer, it's a lot easier to do one of each. To have your creator-owned stuff to basically make your portfolio. I've got Beast of the Black Hand and Shinku and Samurai Heaven and Earth and Dark Horse, Dragon Prince and Top Cow. As you do more of this stuff, you have a portfolio of things that are yours, you own, that nobody can ever take away from you, and that are exactly what you want them to be. At the same time, you do commercial gigs, you do corporate gigs, you do stuff that's work for hire, so that your profile stays somewhat in the public consciousness. and if, I think next week actually, my first issue of Fathom from Aspen Comics comes out, which is a Michael Turner creation. I wrote Witchblade for probably a decade. It's another Michael Turner creation. So the guys from Aspen came to me and said, "You want to do this one?" And it's worked out great so far. I'm really anxious to see how the response is to that. I'm working with a terrific artist named Scion, who is doing amazing work. It's like I said in the panel, you try to keep as much on the smorgasbord as you can. This should be a buffet. I love pizza. I don't want to eat it 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. I want to eat different things on different days at different times. Being able to do that in comics is, it keeps you fresh, creative.
When you say to people, young creators young artists or young writers who want to get into the business,
Really, it's a lot different than when I broke in, because there are very few venues to do comics. I mean, I broke in, and my first gig in comics was Silver Surfer. It was, I always say breaking into comics is like working your way up through the minor leagues in baseball. You start at rookie ball, and then single A, and then double A and triple A. You work your way up to eventually playing third base for the Yankees. If I started playing third base for the Yankees, I started at Marz. I got hugely fortunate, thanks to Jim Starlin. So I started at the top of the food chain. It really doesn't work that way. I was lucky then. What I did then is probably impossible now, because you have to have credit somewhere else. You have to have major bones somewhere else before Marvel or DC are gonna give you a shot. So while you have to work your way up now, it's also easier to do that. There are more venues to put your work into the public eye than ever before. Do what you want, put it online. You eventually can do small press, and if your small press stuff is good, you get noticed by small publishers. And if your small publisher stuff is good, you get noticed by bigger publishers like Boom and IDW and Image. And eventually you work your way up to maybe getting a shot at Marvel and DC. I look at the career path of people that are just now doing their first Marvel and DC gigs, and they've been at this for 6, 8, 10 years before they ever get a bite at that apple. It's the level of stick-to-itiveness that you have to have as a creator, especially as a writer. As an artist, you can just put your stuff in front of an editor, and they know pretty quickly whether they want to hire you. As a writer, you got to get somebody to sit down and read your work, and it's a much longer process. So writers working their way up have a much tougher row, but you can also, if you get there and you hit your target, it's the best job in the world.
you said something in there in the panel about, that you have to stick to deadlines. If you can stick to deadlines, you can impress an editor. That's the way to go too. I thought that was extremely.
There's
important.
always somebody willing to take your job. There's always somebody willing to take your job for half the money they're paying you, or maybe less than half. So you can't be a problem. There's probably half the people in this building want to write or draw comics right now. Doesn't mean they have the ability to do so, but there's always somebody willing to take that gig. So if you're a pain in the ass to your editor, or if you're late, if you're a problem, they will hire somebody who isn't a problem. It's survival of the fittest. In some ways, it's survival of the fastest.
Well, I had one thing I wanted to ask. We asked you a question earlier about taking over a book from like Jim Starlin. I would also like you were talking about the fans, and I can admit that at one point I was a crabby fan. I was struggling with Hal Jordan, but I was reading your Green Lantern like every month, and I was like saying, I would keep picking it up. So how did it feel about? Can you talk about winning over the fans, where it starts off, you have a controversial storyline, and then at one point, Kyle Rayner was bigger than Hal. So can you talk about that?
Certainly we knew that we were going to have people on that book. You you do that kind of storyline and it's going to have that kind of promotion behind it, you will have people show up, even if they just show up and get pissed off. The trick was to execute that storyline and then have people stick around for what came after. So the real job was to make Kyle interesting enough and compelling enough for you guys to stick around to see what happened next. Because that's really what monthly comics are. Monthly comics are soap operas where people hit each other up. You have to care enough about what happens to those characters to come back in 30 days to see, all right, what's next? So that was really the job on Green Lantern, was get you guys in the audience to invest enough in this brand new character that you wanted to stick around and see what happened. So we were fortunate enough that we were able to do that. Kyle is very much constructed on kind of the Spider-Man model, the everyman model in comics, which is the character that you can see yourself be. You know, nobody thinks that they're going to be Bruce Wayne, right? Orphan billions. Nobody thinks they're going to be an alien orphan from another planet that can do anything. Nobody thinks they're going to be, billionaire Tony Stark. But you could be Spider-Man. Like that's the allure of Spider-Man, is he's just a guy. And that was the kind of stuff that I read as a kid that really agrees with me, and made me come back every month, because I wanted to see what Spider-Man did and if he could beat up the Green Goblin again. But I also wanted to see if he could get a date and if he could make his rent and if Aunt May had a heart attack. All the stuff that he did out of costume was just as interesting to me as what he did in costume. And that's what our goal was on Green Lantern, is to make you care about Kyle as a character as much of when he was in street clothes working on an art job as when he, had the Green Lantern ring and he was making giant green gorillas. That to me was the goal every month, is to make sure we balance those two. And I had a ball doing it.
And I guess the last thing I'll ask you is about Batman Aliens. How was it working on that project?
That was the coolest thing ever, because we didn't think they would let us do it. I actually, I was coming back from somewhere with Bernie Rice. Bernie lived literally 1.5 miles down the road from me, and 5 minutes from Jim Starlin's. We were all sort of in the same group, and Bernie and I had been somewhere. I didn't even remember where. He was driving, and we started talking about, well, what should we do together? And Bernie's the one that suggested, well, how about Batman Aliens? I'm like, that'd be cool, but they'll never let us do it. And they did. They, it was a lot easier than it should have been. I think largely due to the fact that it was Bernie. That Bernie writes and says, I'd like to draw Batman Aliens. Everybody sits up and goes, okay. So it was really a really easy process. DC signed on. Dark Horse signed on, because we talked to editors at both places. Bob Schreck was at Dark Horse at the time, and Denny O'Neil was the Batman editor at DC. So there were relationships there already, and we just said, here's what, how about Batman meets Aliens, and lo and behold, they approved it, and then we went, oh shit, we got to come up with a story now. So I don't even remember we just talked about stuff, and basically, what do you want to draw, Bernie? Well, how about an alien that incubates in a crocodile, and we get this big T-Rex alien out of it at the back end of it. So it was a dream project all the way through. Yeah. 20th Century Fox was great. Dark Horse was great. DC was great. I think we had lunch with Denny O'Neil at Denny's favorite Indian place in the city, and I don't know, maybe we talked about story for 10 minutes. He said, he had a couple of Batman pointers for us, and then we just we just did it. I wrote it, and Bernie drew it 1.5 miles down the road from me. So I go over to his place, had to check out what are you working on today, which is pretty cool thing when you go over to Bernie Wright's studio and he's drawing your story.
Oh man. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Are you listening? Damn.